Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm going to talk a little bit about my work, as Heloisa mentioned, on dyadic interactions considering chatbots as community members. This is a project that our team affectionately calls the Weird Bots Project. So just to give you a little background, I am not, and I have until recently not been a chatbots researcher. I am an online communities researcher. And in going through communities like Facebook groups, subreddits, Twitch channels, Discords, I began to see these patterns that bots were supporting these communities in very important ways, but not very advanced ways. There are a number of problems in communities that have been explored for a number of years in the literature, from integrating newcomers to engaging users over time, to making connections between communities to share resources, et cetera, et cetera. And as we were considering the roles of these bots, we decided to think about the ways bots could be built to approach some of these classic challenges. So 3 things I'm going to talk about today. First, I'm going to give a brief summary of a lit review we did of ACM research on chatbots, and also a review of in the wild chatbots. I'm going to talk about a design ideation process that we used for identification of 7 concepts for community-based chatbot roles. So here I'm focusing specifically on the potential for chatbots within communities in the future. And I'll give you the key takeaways in advance. Most of the focus in the research has been on dyadic, or one-on-one interactions with chatbots. And here we're presenting 7 directions for exploring the design of chatbots that engage in communities through multi-party interactions. So the 3 types of interaction styles that I'm going to focus on here are dyadic, broadcasting, and multi-party, and I'm going to go through those one by one just to lay the groundwork. First, dyadic, one-on-one interactions, so a user interacting with a bot. This is a very established mode of chatbots, starting with Eliza, which I'm sure a number of you have heard of, a chatbot built in the 60s that engaged with users about how they were feeling, and they had a conversation. But here, as we define dyadic, we're also defining dyadic as one-on-one conversations within groups. So there can be a group of users with a chatbot present, where a user, for example, types a command and the chatbot responds to them, but the chatbot is not in any way meaningfully part of the discussion. Broadcasting bots, as we're defining here, are bots who create content that is broadcasted and many users see it at once. The obvious examples of these are Twitter bots. So the Ephemerides bot by Alison Parrish generates content by mixing photos from NASA's deep space probes with automatically generated text. And Zoe is Microsoft's successor to Tay. And it often tweeted out questions like this, which people would respond to. So that's a broadcasting modality, but also note that these aren't meant to be discrete modalities. Zoe also engages with users one-on-one in the comments. So this Zoe is a chatbot with broadcasting and dyadic functionalities. The last of the 3 is multi-party interactions, which is the rarest and what I'm going to focus on here, which is a bot that's truly engaged in depth within a community that's part of ongoing conversations with many users, interjecting in places that make sense. This is a form of social organization that we as humans do all the time. At parties, we chat back and forth. We watch each other talking. We take advantage of fairly complex social cues like social status, body language, the tone of speech to decide when it's appropriate for us to jump in, to ask questions, etc. It's a significant technical challenge for chatbots to do this because often they live in environments with far less rich signals to work from. So again, just in summary, 3 non-discrete types of bots. Dyadic, communicate with one user at a time, even if in a group. Broadcasting, posting messages seen by many users at once. And multi-party, engaging in back and forth conversations that involve groups of users. So briefly, I'll talk about what we found in our literature review. The key takeaway is across 104 papers from the ACM Digital Library, we found that 90% of the past ACM research has focused on dyadic interactions. And I won't go into depth on the methods here, but they're in the paper. So 91, that is 91 of 104 papers focused on dyadic interactions, which took the form of development of a task-focused chatbot, like a chatbot to help people monitor their eating, nutrition to get health advice, to search for information. Some papers also did user research on engaging with dyadic chatbots. Some papers proposed tools to support development and frameworks for developing chatbots. There were 6 papers focusing on broadcasting. And again, these were mostly Twitter-based bots of the malicious and disruptive variety for the most part. And also a couple of support bots in online communities like Reddit that provided information on request to a number of users. And finally, there were 6 papers on multi-party chatbots as the primary focus. 2 were taxonomies of group engagement, and the rest were systems trying to do this complex social engagement. I'm going to highlight 2. One is Botavist, which was a paper at CSCW 2016, which worked to get groups of users together to engage in activism. And the second was an animated coffee with chatbots, which is Eloise's paper, which was at Chi last year, which is actually inverting this a little bit because it's multiple chatbots speaking with a user, but focusing primarily on the challenges of deciding when bots should talk in a conversation. So you might notice that there is one paper missing if you were counting. That was the 104th paper didn't specify which of the 3 modalities. And again, quickly, a review of bots in the wild. We identified 130 bots. That's not to say that there are only 130 chatbots in existence, but rather 130 unique modalities of engagement that we found. So here, a chatbot that pretends to be a dog and engage with users is classified as the same as one that pretends to be a cat. Basically the same. So of the dyadic ones, you may have heard of Mitsuku, which is intended to be a demonstration of advanced conversational techniques. There were a number of task-focused bots. Dr. AI is a chatbot to help users find medical help. And there were also a number of commercial chatbots. You can use the Domino's Pizza bot if you like. I'm not sure if it works in Glasgow to order pizza. And Sephora bot was, I think until recently, I'm not sure if it still works, a bot that would help you try on makeup via your webcam. And broadcasting, again, primarily Twitter, content paired with generated text, and Tay/Zo style of interactions. And finally, 13 of the 130 bots we found used multi-party interactions as their primary mode. They were mostly community-based, so Discord, Twitch, Slack, and they help organize social interactions like group meetings and gaming sessions. This is a demo of a bot on Twitch where users can join a bank heist in a mini game, and they work together, and there's a little bit of a narrative, and in the end, they are successful in robbing the bank. So that's a pretty lightweight multi-party chatbot. So the bulk of the contribution here that we present is considering design opportunities for multi-party chatbots in communities moving forward. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got to those design concepts and then give a few examples. With a team of 6 designers and social scientists, we used several ideation methods, including the new metaphors method, which is what these cards are from, which use rather outside the box concepts to inspire new ideas, and we worked from these to think of strange concepts for chatbot features. We also used card-based ideation decks, which are similar, except it involves mixing and matching of different themed cards. Through this process, we generated 600 concepts for chatbot features. You can see a few of them here: playing a virtual mercenary, generating rumors about other members of a community, mansplaining things to other users. So these weren't intended to necessarily be particularly good ideas for chatbots, but they were intended to push the boundaries of what one might design. After we finished ideating our 600 ideas, we performed affinity diagramming, reducing the number down into 22 categories, and then 9, and then 7, collapsing when there was significant overlap. And here are the final 7 categories that we came up with. Antagonist, archivist, authority figure, dependent, clown, social organizer, and storyteller. Now, these are all roles that you might find familiar from human group interactions. These are all fairly well-known and established social roles. They're not ones that we see yet within communities taken by chatbots. I'm going to give an example of 3 of these: the dependent, the social organizer, and the storyteller. So first of all, imagine a novice bot, a bot that joins a community and it has no idea how to behave. It makes mistakes, it annoys people, it says things it shouldn't, and over the time the community has to decide whether they're going to teach it to behave well or not and just kick it out. And if it's taught well, it can become, over time, a valuable member of the community, which helps communities learn to integrate newcomers more effectively, hopefully, and also to reflect on their values as a community. A second example is the ambassador bot. As I mentioned earlier, it's important for communities to make connections with each other, to share resources, information, ideas, even members. We imagined an ambassador bot, a chatbot that travels between communities, meets users, and connects them back to their original communities in order to share these sorts of resources. And finally, a set of couple bots. So I mentioned that addressing engagement in communities is often a problem, especially in periods of downtime like a sports-based community in the off-season, or a Twitch stream when the game is slow or when the streamer is taking a break. There could be benefit to providing additional engagement. So in this case, we imagined a storyteller as a type of bot that would help users keep engaged by creating an interactive narrative. And in this case, we proposed 2 bots who, depending on the actions of the users in the community, may become a couple or not over the period of their life cycle in the channel. I'm going to wrap up with 3 challenges that we identified throughout this process for designing chatbots as community members. These are intended to be not necessarily challenges that should be met with every chatbot design, but rather challenges that designers could consider throughout their design processes. First of all, does the chatbot become recognized as a legitimate participant within the community? And of course, legitimate means a different thing in every community, but finding that out is an important part of the design process as well. Second, does the chatbot contribute meaningfully to the development of the community? So often we see chatbots that are tools, but could a chatbot contribute meaningfully in a way that helps the community evolve over time? And correspondingly, does the chatbot's role in the community itself evolve over time? Is it the same thing from day 1 to day 100? Or does it grow and learn? Does it shift its behavior with shifting community norms? Or does it stay the same? So finally, in summary, key takeaways: 90% of ACM research on chatbots so far has focused on dyadic interactions, and 80% of in-the-wild chatbots are built around dyadic interactions. And while multi-party conversation is technically difficult, there are really quite a lot of opportunities, we believe, to push into the multi-party space to enhance community interactions. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for, this doesn't work, I don't want to do this. I'll just ask. Thanks for distinguishing between my and Is it working? Oh, okay. So I don't think dyadic interactions and multi-party interactions are mutually exclusive, right? So obviously you note that dyadic interactions put together probably form multi-party interactions together. So how can we think about designing for those inclusive relationships? Because Twitter bots are usually dyadic interactions that are watched by other members, but we're also not talking about dyadic relationships like on Slack that can be just only one-on-one sort of personal relationships. So maybe there's room for a more nuanced view on how you're looking at those two categories?
Sure. As I mentioned, we're not considering these categories as mutually exclusive. And I think you make a fair point that there is maybe a subcategory of dyadic interactions that are observed by a community. I think, and this is maybe a debate we could have. I'm not sure that I think that many dyadic interactions put together would constitute multi-party interactions, but I think that's more of a conceptual how we frame it sort of thing. But I take your point.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It was great. I'm Carla from INRIA. So I was wondering, you listed a lot of different categories in this space for opportunities for design. There was one that was called the archiver. And something that I observed that happens in Slack with the Slack bot kind of resonates with that name, but I wonder what is your definition for that?
Yeah, so bots are often used in spaces already to keep chat logs. That happens on Discord and Twitch, and there are Reddit scrapers that perform that function roughly. In terms of archivist, we were thinking here a little bit more about a historian-type role where not only would a bot keep the history, but would also represent it and interpret it and remind the community of significant moments. So somewhat more interactive than just collecting history.
Right, because so far I think that the Slack bot sometimes acts like that, especially since it's customizable. I noticed that over the years in the lab we ended up embedding a lot of inside jokes that we have in the team in the Slack bot, and it really has an impact in the community. When you're having a conversation and suddenly one of your inside jokes is triggered, it feels like the Slack bot is part of the conversation, and it helps keeping the culture alive. So I see that customizing Slack bots gives that opportunity, and maybe it's part of could be one direction for design as well.
That's a really interesting experience. I'd like to hear more about that.
Oh, yeah, let's talk.